If you are not moving forward and exploring and learning and discovering, you are falling backwards. We want peace, and we want a future that trends with less violence. Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low. Know thy enemy, know thyself. And if you are deceived in your own arrogance and your own dominance of the past, that what you did in the past is sufficient to win in the future, eventually you're going to be a dead man. And this Constitution that America has is the best hope of humanity. We have the creativity. God has given us the brains to create our future, to build it. The way to do that is not to ignore a new domain and new technologies. How do we use this knowledge God has given us to glorify God and not let evil people use it as a weapon against good people? We don't have to be victims. Technology does change fate. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Space Revolution, where we are inspired by what is coming and the way that this space revolution will change your life in a meaningful way. So, Jordan Sather, thank you for co-hosting and welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on again, General.
Yeah, well, this is going to be a good one. Again, this segment is on energy. And again, we move from information and energy and resources. But today, this is the show is on energy and its implications on transportation. But really, just going to be such a wonderful show because there is so much bubbling under the surface with regard to energy techniques that provide meaningful energy to all people on the planet in ways that many people haven't even really investigated. It's like we've been kept in the dark for 100 years and we're now just coming into the light. So this show is going to be fun, and we've got a few books for you to read to get smarter on what this means for humanity. And we have some videos that help illustrate this. So hopefully you're in a place where you can watch and not just listen, because these visuals sometimes can tell the story in a way that 1,000 words cannot. So Jordan, why don't you kick us off and kind of frame what we're going to talk about here?
So to initiate this conversation, something I would like to lay the foundation with and then have you comment on. So when it comes to technological progress, usually we see the progress of any new technology that comes out as an exponential curve. So one example, we could use the cell phone, for instance. About 20 years ago, they were very rudimentary objects, still had physical buttons on them, and the screens were pixelated. 15 years ago, the first iPhone came out, and then the touch screen, we had apps starting on them, GPS enabled. And then over the last 15 years, now we have smartphones that fold with front and back facing cameras that are 4K, 120 frames per second. The progress of the phone has been more or less exponential. AI as well. Just a couple of years ago, AI could barely make a video. And now it's tough to distinguish what's real and what's not on social media with AI. It's usually the rate of progress with technologies is exponential. But in certain areas and in certain industries, there has not been that exponential advancement. It's almost not been linear advancement. It's been the exact same. So more or less, one area would be the way we generate electricity. We're still just trying to figure out advanced ways to boil water to generate electricity, whether it's with coal or gas or nuclear. And in other ways with especially transportation, we're still using Bernoulli's principle to generate lift and figure out ways to basically burn a fuel to control an explosion to generate thrust, whether that thrust is in a train, a vehicle, or a rocket or a jet. So why have these areas of electricity generation and transportation been basically stuck for over 100 years?
Yeah, so that's a good way to kind of frame this. And what I'll provide is at least two other components or layers to this to kind of frame our conversation going forward. The first is, as a student of innovation and a person who had the job of innovating within the military for over 33 years, I can tell you that there are two categories of innovation that will fit well into this conversation today. The first is incremental innovation, and you talked about some of those, where we take something like a mousetrap and we make it a little bit better. But nobody invents a way to get rid of the mousetrap altogether and not even need the mousetrap. So that's incremental innovation, where smart people go to work on the business case that is solving a problem for humanity, and they make it just that much better. Then there's the other category, and that is transformational innovation. And that's where you don't even need the mousetrap at all. And you figured out, a laser gun to kill the mouse that's automated, where the mouse moves, it knows it's a mouse, and it's dead. That would be transformational innovation. It's still a mousetrap, but it's in a totally different realm that changes the game altogether. And we're going to talk about both of those today. And the reason why this fits into the space revolution is because space is such a unique geography with regard to energy, and transportation is such a powerful mover of, no pun intended, but mover of human evolution. That the transformation of energy in ways that we've never seen before changes transportation. And the reason I say transportation, it's one of those eight essentials of life. We talk about these three pillars in this framework of space revolution, where we talk about how information will change by using the space geography, how energy will change using the space geography, and how resources will change using the space geography. But then the eight essentials that we talk about are the things we need as human beings. And so they are, food, water, shelter, information, energy, transportation, healthcare, and the key here is transportation has always been a key pillar of change. This is why Elon Musk, he is a transportation guy ultimately. Now he's using chemical propulsion. So when we talk about energy, this is the nexus between energy and transportation, where Elon Musk is transforming transportation by using chemical energy to make reusable rockets. But it's the transportation that changes, whether it was ships or planes or cars or trains. When you develop a new mode of mobility, and that's probably a better word than transportation is mobility. When you develop a new mode of mobility for the human race, you transform the economy. And space is a place where energy innovations that we're going to talk about today will transform transportation in a way that we'll talk about more, but that will be a breakthrough. It will not be incremental innovation in the way we do things today. It will be transformational innovation in energy that will therefore transform transportation or mobility in ways that we'll demonstrate, show, and talk about on the show today.
And sometimes these technologies, or even scientific and physics principles, they're called disruptive technologies because they would disrupt the current industrial paradigm so much that a lot of whether it's business executives and CEOs or the scientists themselves, they're very apprehensive to sort of letting these disruptive technologies out because they don't want their bread and butter. They don't want their paradigms too shifted. And you bring up Elon, which I'm very, very happy you did. I love a lot of what Elon's doing in terms of the information space, allowing free speech on X, and his reusable rockets are creating much easier and cheaper access to space. Yet he is still utilizing a lot of the same propulsion mechanisms, controlled explosions, chemical propulsion that we've been using for 100 years. And whether it's cars, whether it's the jets we're using, sure, the turbines are becoming more efficient. The rockets are becoming reusable. Our vehicles now have a lot of gizmos and gadgets and computers and sensors on them. So the modes of transportation we're using are becoming a lot more advanced, but it still seems like they're within that
Yeah.
incremental box that you were describing, and it's
Yeah.
really not much has been transformational in quite a
That's
long
right.
time.
Yeah, so this tees up our first video, because this video will illustrate how even Elon Musk is trapped in the paradigm of the past using chemical propulsion, but he is using it to transform incrementally transportation. So let me go ahead and play this video, and we'll kind of talk through it as we go into it, but it is really fun. So tell me when you can see my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Cannot yet, no.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna try to share this. Okay, let me bring it onto the screen here. Okay, can you see that?
Yep. It's up now, yes.
Okay, great. So this will illustrate. So everybody, if you can look at your screen, this will help. Right now, you are in New York City at 6:30 a.m., okay? And you are getting ready to commute somewhere. Now, what you're going to watch is you're going to watch Elon Musk's Starship that is already flying. And in fact, it is already flying in low Earth, in low Earth orbit in a way that is real for what you're going to see right here. And it will be an example, and I may pause it in between, but really watch the little taglines that show up, because there's just music, there's no words to this, but it will really help you understand this concept of incremental innovation, which Elon Musk is using here with chemical propulsion to try to transform the mobility of people around the planet. And for any of you that have heard me say before that we have the technology to be able to take somebody from any point on the planet to any other point on the planet in less than an hour, this is what I'm talking about. People think I'm talking about a Star Trek transporter. I'm not. That may come in the future, but right now we can do that with this technology. So watch this video, and then we're going to talk about it. So that one rocket is going back to the launching pad. See this rocket right here in the middle that was launching that into space, into near space? That's going back to land straight on the pad that was launched from, and refuel to get ready to launch another one, just like you would get on an airline and go somewhere else in the world. So now you're landing in Singapore at 7:39 p.m., which is basically just a few minutes after you took off, because it only takes you about 7 minutes to get up into space. And then when there's no air, you can move at Mach 20 and be there in just a few minutes, and then land safely and at your destination. We'll talk more in a second. So 39 minutes flight time from New York City to Shanghai. Sorry, Shanghai, not Singapore.
Wonder if the average person could handle the G-forces of that.
Well, so that's a great question, and the answer is yes, because what he has done is he is lifting off with a Starship in a way where the people can withstand that. They're in their seats. Yes, it's more than taking off in an aircraft, but it is not anything that would require training for any average person. It would just be like accelerating
right?
in your Camaro, pretty fast, or going around a corner at 70 miles an hour a little too fast.
So, you mentioned your viral clip from your Hillsdale College speech, if I'm remembering
Mhm.
correctly, which you did
Yeah.
in was that 2019?
Yes.
So, when you mentioned during your speech that we have the technology to take a person anywhere in the world in under an hour, and I remember when that went viral online, and a lot of articles were kind of jumping to conclusions, thinking you were talking about some kind of anti-gravity technology or something way beyond what you really meant. And then I believe you clarified later, discussing that kind of technology where you go up high in the atmosphere enough where there's very little drag, and you can use
Yeah.
uh, very fast rockets to take you to the other side of the planet. Now, I might be jumping ahead in this conversation of where we plan to go, but I'm going to do it anyway, so we can
Yeah.
discuss it. Now, some of these transformational, innovatively transformational, not incremental, but transformational propulsion technologies, I think, or I would hope, would have to do with some kind of electrostatic mode of transportation where you could couple electricity with gravity in such a way to be able to not only shield the craft and the occupants of the craft from G forces, but move very fast through water, air, or space, some kind of medium. If that's transformational or disruptive, it would seem to me, rather than it would be more beneficial and strategic to not just force that kind of technology out to the public, but work within the incremental approaches to bring that transformational technology out to the public. So, say we could maybe create some kind of aircraft, plane, or rocket with electrostatic charge on it to sort of incrementally transform or bring that technology out.
Well, yeah. So you're discussing several different components of the strategy here. One
Bringing a
is
lot, Andy, I know.
yeah, one is change management, where human beings don't adapt to new technologies very quickly. In other words, we are who we are. Human nature is what it is. And when you take a look and track the history of how long it takes the human race to adapt to a new technology, it takes decades. I mean, when you track the internal combustion engine, and the vehicle, or the phone, or TV, or airplanes, it takes decades to adapt. But the human race is actually starting to adapt slightly quicker, but not much. Okay, so there's the cultural component of change management that we have to consider. Technology can change fast. What is the strategy to adopt new ones? But I think it's okay to dovetail into this next phase of our conversation for this program, because what you watched with Elon Musk there is an example of old technology, incremental innovation in a very novel and useful way. But the reality is, if that the technology we're exploring with today can allow you to move from New York City to Shanghai, like we saw in the first portion of that clip, in not just 37 minutes, but in a few seconds, like less than a minute, because you can create a bubble in gravity and move almost at the speed of light without having to feel the forces of gravity. These are experiments that are being done around the world by scientists and engineers, where they are exploring the ability to tap into this energy force that is, people call it gravity. You've heard me talk about it before, but really the experts call it compression. There is a compression force in our universe that exists everywhere, both on our planet and between the planets. It's why the Earth rotates around the sun. It's not rotating around the sun. It's basically following a path of gravitational fields. But those gravitational fields are energy. And we know that because when you hold, when a rock is on top of a mountain, it looks benign and like it's just sitting there. But if you roll it off the edge of the cliff, when it hits, it has the force of tremendous kinetic energy. So that rock had a lot of damn energy in it. Okay. Gravity is the same way, or compression, where we feel the compression of 1G right now. But that compression has tremendous energy in it. And what the engineers and scientists are doing is they are exploring how you tap into that. And they're discovering that the way you tap into it is with some spinning discs. So for anybody that knows somebody that has seen a flying saucer spinning, and then it is hovering there, and then it disappears at the speed of light, meaning it accelerates from 0 to the speed of light, it seems, instantaneously. That is what these small discoveries, where we don't know what we're looking at, we don't know how it works, we don't know why it works, but we can see that we are able to tap into the gravitational field or the compression in the universe as a source of energy. We just don't know how to control it yet, but they're getting closer and closer. And when we can, it's not just about being able to tap into a source of energy where anywhere you're at in the universe, you have infinite abundant energy at your fingertips. It's also that you can create this bubble in the compression or gravity in the universe to be able to move as if there's no gravity. It's almost your own gravitational field where you can cut through gravity like a hot knife through butter. We don't know how it works. We don't know why it works, but we know it exists, and we are working feverishly to turn it into a transformational mode of mobility for the human race to move anywhere they need to, anytime, at a price point that's affordable.
When I try to ponder the true cosmology of reality, or the theory of everything, it seems to me that because everything in our universe spins, the spin, or that motion, is the driving factor of, I mean, our galaxies spin, our stars rotate, our Earth rotates on its axis and then spins around the star. We're constantly moving through space and time, and that motion is everything. And because everything is spinning and rotating and counter rotating, we can tap into sort of those gyroscopic forces, or we can tap into that motion in some way to sort of force that compression or utilize that compression. And it seems for the past 100 years, we've been so obsessed with the opposite of that, with explosion, things exploding, controlled explosions to propel. But if we were to sort of work with nature instead of against nature, if we were to utilize these implosive forces instead of explosive forces, that's really where the transformational advancements are going to come in terms of energy and transportation and the like.
No, that's very true. So now we've kind of we jumped into the deep end where we talked about a transformational innovation that most people haven't even heard about. And where we're at on that with the scientists in countries all over the world is we don't know how to control it. But when we tap into it with these spinning discs, the energy released is so dramatic that it's very, very dangerous. It was like back in the Manhattan Project where we were tinkering with the atomic bomb, and we were trying to figure out how to control it so you could have a yield that didn't destroy the entire Earth or cascade into a chain reaction that destroyed humanity. That's where we're at with some of these energy sources where we are trying to control it. I can envision where you have a wristwatch, and that wristwatch has a couple spinning discs. And if you need, 20 watts of energy to do something, you can tap into it anywhere you are immediately. Or if you want to power a city, you have spinning discs, the size of a stadium. And those spinning discs tap into the compression or the gravity to provide energy almost, once you build the infrastructure for free to the city or to the state or to the nation. So that's kind of the far end of the pool, the deep end of the pool here on transformational energy sources. But there's a lot of transformational energy sources that are also novel, but they're smaller. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that because, transportation, and let me do one other segue as we kind of jump back and forth between incremental innovation and transformational innovation and some of these ideas that are out there. And that is, why is this part of a space revolution conversation? And the answer is because energy has to be delivered, okay, to you, to me, to the people that need it. And when you are living in a terrestrial linear environment, you build a system where you build a power plant, and that power plant, powers the cities that are close by through power lines. That is a linear model of energy delivery. The reason the space revolution is so critical to this energy revolution is because of the geography of space. Just like when you're in a valley and you can just see the sides of the valley and it's hard to see very far ahead of you as the valley is turning and winding. But if you're on top of the mountain, you can see into all the valleys. Or if you're in space, you can see even more. From that high ground, you can now, through beamed energy, which is very traditional now, I mean, it's known, it's not even that transformational. It's almost an incremental innovation in energy, just like when we cut the wire to the phone. That was an incremental innovation of phone technology to communicate. The same is true with energy. Cutting the cord on energy, cutting the power line to your home or to your phone is incremental because we know how to beam energy to any place, any device. When you can do that from space, now you can beam energy to thousands of people with one capital investment versus the linear way we do it now, where if I want to deliver energy to a small tribe in Africa, I've got to build a power plant close by, and that's not easy to do. So my point on this is that the space revolution is a revolution in information, energy, and resources because of the strategic high ground and the geometry and the geography of that high ground being able to deliver with one small capital investment to millions, if not billions of people with a small investment in infrastructure.
For all the years that I've researched and thought about and been upset over not having those deep end technologies and physics principles and whatnot that we've been discussing, I now that I'm later in life and understand more of the sort of game theory of what's going on this planet, I can understand why a lot of the patents were classified over the decades, and some of these technologies and physics principles probably kept secret because, as you described, they're so powerful, and us humans here, we're still spiritual children in large regard, that we would basically destroy ourselves probably if some of those technologies were forced onto the public. And also, one of the roadblocks in getting those deep end ideas and technologies out to the public is simply the information pillar that you often discussed, because for 100 years our physics textbooks have been written in such a way, and our paradigm, our foundational assumptions of science have been set up in such a way where it's difficult to get people to even conceptualize the way number one, questioning the quote unquote laws of physics, but then conceptualizing how the technologies would work. And then another roadblock is getting the industrialists to invest in something they don't want to do paradigm shifting. But recently, learning about space-based solar power over the past couple of years or so, I would almost just be happy with that. Thinking of a satellite in space utilizing radio waves to sort of bathe the surface of the planet in electromagnetic energy that could just be converted to electricity right there on the spot. I mean, that enough for me. I'd be good there. I don't need the.
So that's good, and that goes back to your strategy about change management and the human condition, where you want, people are not going to change overnight. There's a small component in the bell curve of people that will adopt something new very quickly, but the majority of people wait till it's proven. And then the far end of the bell curve, people won't use it until it's been proven for 20 years. So, there's a whole spectrum of how a theory of change management, and you have to be mindful of people. Otherwise, you may have the right idea, but nobody's going to follow you. if you don't do what you were talking about, where you and so that's where space can actually be a gateway to energy transformation, where we take a small step that's kind of incremental, and the incremental step is okay. It's electricity. It's just beamed from the sun's beautiful, clean, abundant, sustainable power to a rectina near you so that you have electricity anywhere on the planet, and you don't have to have pollution. You don't have to have power lines that make the sky look ugly. You don't have to have the danger of your kids putting their fingers in the light sockets or the sockets in your house. I mean, it can be a very comfortable and easy ride into the future, as then we start ushering in new technologies that allow people to tap into abundant energy anywhere they're at without having to rely on anybody or anything. All they need is the device that we build that allows them to manage drawing this infinite amount of energy that's compressed all around us right now in the form of gravity. So that could be a good strategy for the human race, to take one small step for mankind, one giant leap, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But space plays a role because of its geographic high ground, its geometry, to be able to do it affordably. With one satellite, you can service millions of people. That's where it becomes affordable. And so, but I want to bring up the book that you recommended, because this is not a bad place to talk about it, because this, our 1 hour show here is only going to just scratch the surface of the number of people out there that are exploring new sources of energy, both incremental and transformational. And this is a book that really does help you think through some of the information or energy technologies that will transform a mobility. So in this book, as you read this book, and I'll have you tee this up in a second, but in fact, I'll have you tee it up now, and then I'll talk about how these technologies in this book are going to transform the way we move things in space and really in air, anything above the surface, and start moving away from chemical propulsion, which is what we use today. So why don't you tee this book up and give our listeners a little tidbit of the joy they're going to have when they read this book.
Yes, this book is called Infinite Energy Technologies. It was written by Dr. Finley Eversole, published in 2011. And I came across this book, I purchased it, I read it, and I was a huge fan of it because he does some great research and dives into the work of course, Nikola Tesla, more of the deeper sort of theories and concepts surrounding Nikola Tesla. Of course, very famous name, but there's a few other names he discusses in this book that aren't as famous as Nikola Tesla, but I think their work is just as disruptive and transformational. One of those scientists he writes about is Thomas Townsend Brown. And T. Townsend Brown was doing experiments and studies back in the 1940s and 50s here in the US of the coupling between electricity and gravity. T. Townsend Brown called it electrogravitics, but he was doing studies with disks and electrostatic charge into the metallic disks, and how that basically levitating them in such a way. So T. Townsend Brown is one of the scientists that Finley Eversole writes about in this book. Nikola Tesla, Victor Schauberger is another. And Victor Schauberger and his vortexing water research is quite fascinating. So this is a very good book for sort of the deep end of the pool that we've been discussing here in this conversation. And thinking about space-based solar power again, I think beaming energy from space would be both incremental and transformational in one, because and it's great that a lot of not only private companies but governments are starting to heavily research and even develop space-based solar power. So it seems like we're just at the cusp of that. But if we had a satellite in space utilizing either microwaves or radio waves, beaming that electricity down to Earth, it would help customize people to not needing to plug anything into the wall. And I think that is sort of the biggest customization, if that's a word there, because people are so used to charging things in an outlet, whether it's their vehicle or whether it's their phone in the wall or us needing to have this computer plugged in all the time to receive electricity to charge it. But if we were able to have a little rectenna, a little device in every single screen or vehicle or every single device we were using, and it were just able to trickle charge from that satellite in space, just the paradigm shift, the mindset shift would be so, I mean, it would be quite dramatic for a lot of people. But that that decentralization right there would be absolutely massive, and it would help customize people to the deep end technologies that are possibly even more decentralized. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about some of these technologies, each one of the technologies in this book can be used to power a spacecraft, an aircraft, a car, a train, a ship, all of those. And what people may not realize is that the energy and transportation or mobility of humanity nexus is really powerful. For example, right now, 70% of the energy on the planet is used for transportation. 70%. Okay, think about that. And from space, I talked about this on episode 8 with the logistics of space 101, and we talked about it with regard to resources and building homes in space and delivering to the Earth. But this next video shows the power of energy and transportation, but it also reveals this incremental innovation versus the transformational innovation. And I want to show you this right now, because I'll show you this video, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about the deep end, where this is what we could do today, just like beaming power from space we could do today. We can do this today, but in the future, we don't have to even do this. So I'll show you, this is kind of the strategy where we could take this step today, and then in the future, we could take a better step. So let's watch this video, and then we'll talk about it.
I'm the guy who jumped from space.
So this guy's in space. And for all of those people that think that the only way to get from space to the Earth is to have a heat shield and burn up in the atmosphere, just do not understand the physics. The only reason we did that in the 60s because we couldn't figure out another way, and we didn't have enough fuel when we got back from the moon to be able to slow down and align our velocity with the molecules of air that are rotating around the Earth with the Earth at about 1,000 miles an hour. But this is the proof that we can do this in very clever and simple ways, both incrementally today and then transformationally in the future, that I'll talk about as soon as we're done watching this. So watch this guy and you'll get a good sense for what we could do if we manufactured something in space and then wanted to deliver it to any point on the Earth.
Really quick, do you know what his altitude is?
I wanted to be the
Yeah, he was up at 100 kilometers, essentially,
Gotcha.
the edge of space.
first human outside of an aircraft breaking the sound barrier. Ow.
Now, he wanted to break the sound barrier, but you don't need to. In other words, he's just falling. But, if you are in a mechanism that has been engineered by people, you can slow down in very novel ways. And you'll see he actually does slow down after he breaks the sound barrier. But he wanted to be the first human being to break the sound barrier. That was just kind of an iconic a legacy for him. You don't have to do that. And we'll talk about that in a second. But here we go. It's really fun to watch.
Almost weigh twice the weight that I normally have. And it's very difficult to do a perfect exit. Do not over-rotate. Because if I start over-rotating, there's no air that you can use to slow down.
Okay, Joe, I'm ready. Okay, here we go, Felix. I'm going over.
There he goes. I want to do that.
First 25 seconds, it looked like everything's under control. And after 34 seconds, I hit Mach 1 and I broke the speed of sound.
Was that him breaking the...
That was our goal.
And by the way, it doesn't hurt your body to break the speed of sound. It's really just the air that can't get out of your way fast enough. And it's the air breaking from like a bow wave on a ship that's kind of circular. And if the ship goes fast enough, it becomes a nice V. That's what's happening with the air, because air is just like water, same fluid dynamics. So it didn't hurt him a bit. He didn't feel it. You don't feel it. I've broken the speed of sound so many times in my aircraft, and it's just like a little burble. But on the ground, it sounds dramatic because you hear this ba-boom. That's the sonic boom. But in the aircraft or in his body, it's nothing.
I wanted to be the first human outside of an aircraft breaking the sound barrier. Because of the fact that a lot of those scientists said prior to the jump, you're going to spin like crazy, and the other half said, we don't think anything is going to happen. I was mentally prepared to spin, but I was hoping that I'm not going to spin. Now, if you watch the next couple of seconds, you see at that moment, it slowly starts to spin. It's getting faster. The problem is there's no protocol. There's nobody in the world telling you, listen, Felix, if this happens, you have to do this while the whole world is watching. Then I was trying to move my arms around a little bit, just maybe it does something. And then it stopped for a second, but now it starts getting the opposite direction, and then it really ramps up. At that moment, it's not about breaking records anymore. At that moment, it's all about survival.
Speed 600 miles per hour.
There's only one way for the blood to leave your skull, and that's through all the eyeballs. If that happens, you're gonna die.
Speed 700.
I had a Chi-Whiz attached to my hand. The Chi-Whiz is a device that it fires a drogue chute that pulls you out of that flat spin. That's why I put my hands in to trick that Chi-Whiz. It's less Chi, and now the Chi-Whiz senses, less Chi, that means he's getting it under control. I turned around and I was stable as a rock.
So that, they're being dramatic about his spinning and being life-threatening. We know how to throw out a drag chute. We do it in race car driving. We do it with aircraft. The ability to control your orientation as you're falling is easy. And with AI and supercomputing, this is a no-brainer. But this was an event that was dramatic. They wanted to make it dramatic, and that's fine. It's a lot of fun. But this is easy stuff. This is like a fifth grader can do it.
So when you look at my suit, the more you fall, the more depressurized the suit gets. And here you can already see the suit flapping.
Now, I don't take anything away from the guy. It takes guts to do something like this. But it's about as safe. It's probably safer than getting on the freeway and driving your car, statistically.
You look at the sky, it's blue now. So we went from black sky back to blue sky. If you look at the right corner, Luke was dropping some flares, and it gives me the perfect direction for the wind. Now this is a very important moment. Very first time after hours and hours inside that spacesuit that I'm breathing regular air. So now I'm really happy because even the landing worked just perfect.
Okay, so the reality is that you can manufacture anything in space, no matter how big or how small. You can align it with just a little bit of fuel to be the same velocity as our air molecules. You can descend it just like he did. You can control your orientation and your speed, so you don't have to even break the speed sound. And you can land as light as a feather. And with quadcopter technology, you could have that whole parachute mechanism as soon as the thing touches the ground, as light as a feather. That parachute, folds up, is sucked up, and the quadcopter takes the parachute to a shipping container somewhere close by that gets shipped back to the factory, that gets sent back up into space to do it again. So the sustainability and the ability to now have manufacturing capability in space where you can literally you can transport anything anywhere on the Earth for a fraction of the cost, because in space, all it takes is a little bit of velocity, a vector and velocity to send something and have it use gravity to achieve that reverse orbital velocity and then descend down and land on Earth. So now, instead of having to go through the friction of the ocean or the land or the air, you can manufacture and deliver things anywhere on the planet for a fraction of the cost. So you remember back in the day, well, we don't, but you remember back in the day when the Spaniards, the Portuguese, and the English developed deep sea navigation and then as well shipbuilding, and wind was their only propulsion. And then the transformation, they own the economy of the world. And then when we developed oil and steam, and then nuclear, and now anybody in the world can benefit from the revolution in technology that took place, or in transportation that took place for the open oceans. The same is going to happen in space, except in space, you don't have to steam for days to get to your destination. You flick it from the manufacturing facility in space, and it arrives in a few minutes anywhere on the planet for pennies of what it costs today. That is a transformational innovation in transportation, empowered by the revolution in space.
Right. And you mentioned 70% of all the energy that we're currently using is going towards transportation, right?
Correct.
So I've never heard that statistic before, but it makes complete sense with all of the gasoline and oil and electric cars and everything just to power mobility with our civilization. I think some of these deep end technologies, or at least from my research, I don't know exactly what you can speak to, but from my research, some of these deep end technologies like the counter rotating discs, different generators, different torsion or vortex type technologies that are utilizing gyroscopic motion to tap electricity from the ether, if you will. The electricity generation and the being able to utilize compression for motion go hand in hand. So not only are they generating electricity, but that electricity then powers the craft to be able to move forward or side to side or however it might be moving, and then also shield the occupants from inertial forces.
Right.
So
yeah, no. So this is where everything we just looked at, whether it was Elon Musk's going point to point on planet Earth in less than an hour using his Starship and chemical propulsion, to the demonstration that showed a traditional way of delivering things from space to Earth at a fraction of the cost. They're all incremental. When you go to the transformational you're talking about, you don't need either of those ever again. It would be like getting the USS Constitution with its big sails out again as a way of navigating the deep seas. You don't need it because you've got nuclear powered aircraft carriers. You've got, steam powered and oil and gasoline powered ships, but you won't need those either, because what you're talking about is the ability for any vehicle to propel itself using the compression of the environment it's in. If you are in any kind of gravity, which is everywhere in the universe,
if you're in any kind of fluid, right? And
it doesn't matter.
That's why we see these crafts as specific shapes, like discs and triangles and whatnot, because it's utilizing sort of the fluid of space-time to propel. And
and so imagine, for people, just imagine if you could walk out to your driveway, you could get into a vehicle that is powered by these counter-rotating discs or whatever methodology we end up figuring out in order to tap into this infinite energy source that's right under our nose. And you can get into that vehicle, it's comfortable, and you can hover up and then move out and move at the speed of light to any destination, whether it's on Earth or in space, and get there in minutes and slow down, stop, and you don't feel any acceleration or deceleration. You are impervious. It can go, and as we discover what kind of mediums it can go through, the reality is the universe is mostly space. Our impression that you are solid is actually not consistent with what we know the universe is about. But that's a whole nother conversation. So with regard to energy, if we are able, with the incredible creative human mind, to truly tap into what we already have discovered, it's going to transform transportation and mobility, and that will transform everybody's life on the planet, no matter where you live. So that's what's exciting about it. I don't know how it will unfold. I'm talking to many of the scientists that are doing these experiments. It is still in a very dangerous phase because they can't control the energy release. And but when they do, and I know they will, we're going to see something extraordinary.
For our final few minutes here, I just want to hypothesize on the timeline. So it seems like a lot of the incremental innovations, the Trump administration over the past year has opened up a lot of the previous gates that were there. So we're seeing really an acceleration of first the nuclear fission and fusion technologies, but also the space-based solar power.
Yeah.
And I mean, those look like, well, you have some of the nuclear technologies already coming online, but the space-based solar power looks like, I mean, it's being developed, it's being invested into, and we're almost there. And I know some experiments have already taken place in that regard. And then I'm also, I noticed that at NASA's, they're in Florida. What's the name of I forget the name of it's their electrostatics laboratory or something to that effect at Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah.
But one of the scientists there, his name's Charles Bueller, and he's talking about some kind of gravity controlling propulsion system. And this has been in the news for a couple of years now. And then over at Marshall Space Flight Center in Redstone Arsenal, NASA has another laboratory where they're doing experiments with acoustic levitation.
Yeah.
And I find it notable that Trump just moved Space Command headquarters right there to Redstone Arsenal, where NASA's right next to NASA's experiments. So anyway, it looks like the chess pieces are being aligned in such a way to just sort of remove the previous roadblocks of industrial suppression and patent suppression to allow these technologies to start to come out while we're developing the nuclear and the space-based solar power over the next 5, 10, 15 years or so. Waiting in the wings and being researched and developed, these sort of deep end technologies we're talking about will then be able to sort of come out and work in conjunction or replace the fusion and the space-based solar power.
Yeah, to answer the question of timing is like predicting the future.
Yeah.
You can't, but you're right. I think that the plan is genius, where it takes down some of the barriers. It allows these scientists and engineers to innovate, but it gets back to the first question you asked on this show. Why have we been in idle for 100 years plus? Why have we been in this no man's land of no major breakthroughs? And the main issue in my mind is regulation and the deep state. In other words, the people that are powerful and rich, that are getting rich and staying powerful in the current model of delivering information, energy, and resources to people on the planet, don't want it to change. So, one of my famous examples when I first woke up to this is two brothers that I know that were incredibly innovative, developed an engine that would literally make every internal combustion engine made in Detroit obsolete back in the 70s. Their life was threatened when they took this to Detroit. Detroit said, we're not going to use it because we'd have to, retool and change everything, all our investment. It would disrupt our entire industry. And then their life was threatened. And these are people I know and trust. So there are 1,000 other small, transformational, and incremental innovations out there that get compressed or get suffocated because of the current system. So what President Trump is doing is he's lowering the barriers, but he's also giving time that people can start getting used to these new technologies, because they can look like magic when you haven't thought about them or learned about them. That's why it's important for people to read your book here on the infinite energy technologies. And then I'm going to put up the book I want them to read, and that's Energy and Civilization. It's a history, but it helps you understand how energy and transportation or mobility are the game changers for human progress. And as we enter this space revolution, that's going to actually, it's going to start unveiling these transformational innovations that we've been talking about today and that you'll read about in your book. It helps people be ready for it and support it. Because remember, we are the ones with the power. The people have the power. And our bureaucrats regulate based on our will, not their will. They regulate based on our risk tolerance to try new things, not their risk tolerance. They can't tell us, well, we don't want to do that because it could, be risky, and we can't afford any risk. Because if you're not willing to take any risk, you will be the victim of people who are willing to take risk. And because life is a competition. And this is our moment in time. And this is why this show exists. It's a space revolution to help people understand the role they need to play in these innovations that are coming our way. And energy and its implication to mobility is going to be one of the major game changers, as it has been for everything from sea navigation to trains, planes, and automobiles. And space mobility is going to be a game changer that's going to allow us to do things we could never do in the past for price points that everybody can afford. So as we kind of draw to the end here, I'd like you to kind of opine on what kind of questions should our viewers have in their mind as they are starting to watch this space revolution unfold with regard to energy and transportation.
Again, I think one of the biggest things or most important things that we can do is question what we were taught in schools and universities, and the specific points that we are taught as law or fact, I think are guesses
not.
or assumptions. I mean, they are educated guesses and educated assumptions, but at the end of the day, they're still guesses and assumptions. And the issue in our scientific institutions is that they're building assumption upon assumption, and the foundation of their understanding might not be complete. So what laws are we taught that might be a little skewed or a little incomplete? Laws of physics or laws of motion or laws of thermodynamics, right? I think if we can kind of sort of reorient ourselves scientifically and with the physics that we are taught, if we can sort of question that, that will help us wrap our heads around the way that these technologies are working and what's actually possible. I think there's a lot of possibilities that we completely shut out of our mind because we're locked in these boxes, we're locked in these paradigms. And if we were to come to the understanding of, well, these laws of physics are really just, educated guesses. They might not be totally complete. That opens up our consciousness to different possibilities of what we could do, and it might send us down a different path in the future.
No, it's very true. It's the best question, and even the first book that we recommended on the show number 1, episode 1, Irreducible, helps people understand how Einstein's theory of general relativity is wrong, and we know it. But we don't understand quantum physics. And so, if we had been asking, there are scientists even today that refuse to accept that the general theory of relativity is wrong, even though we have proof that it is. This is how hard we cling to the past as human beings. And this open-mindedness you're talking about is so critical. And so there are so many good books that help people understand how to keep this open mind, how to question everything, and realize that we know less about our universe today than we ever have before. Because with every discovery, we realize how much we didn't know and how much we leaned on assumption upon assumption in the past. And now that foundational assumption is gone, and we still cling to those old assumptions that built on that are totally wrong. They may fit within a small microcosm of your space, time, and matter reality, but they are totally irrelevant to the broader universe and the physical makeup of what God created. So I couldn't agree. That is probably the seminal question. And on this show, we only touched on really one transformational energy source that has implications for transportation. There are about 50 others we need to talk about, Jordan. So I look forward to you coming on the show again, and we'll take a deeper dive, because just like innovation that is transformational, it's hard for people to kind of wrap their brains around it because it's so different. They've never heard about it before. It takes time. It's going to take time for people to kind of ease into this warm water of what is coming with this space revolution.
Very difficult conversation to pack into an hour, but we did our best. And, you know, I think all the time, if I were to have one of Stanley Meyer's water-powered motors with one of your Genesis water systems,
yeah,
attachment to it, that you could
change the world.
Infinite miles on that car.
That's right. Well, I thank you very much for joining. And, you know, you are one of the great minds of our time to question everything and show that spirit of an American pioneer, the self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and courage to be able to speak the truth, even if it's not the socially accepted norm. I admire that so much. It's what we need in our age. I think the young generation has it more than any of the older generation, but we need to instill it in the education process. So thank you for joining, and we will see you the next time you join as a co-host, and we'll dive one layer deeper on some of these other technologies that people need to know about.
Thank you, sir. Anytime.
Okay, you have a nice evening. Bye-bye.